Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our Innovation Live event for this afternoon. My name is Mrs. Hughes with the Energy Station. I'm so happy you could join us on this Friday afternoon. I want to thank our amazing partners who are continuing to support us throughout this whole year, the school year, and now 2021. The City of Chula Vista, the Chula Vista Elementary School District, of course, our Chula Vista Public Libraries, SDG&E, NECA, and IDW. Well, today our STEAM topic today is building a wind-powered car, and how appropriate with some of the crazy weather we had this week, right? And behind the scenes, I have two of my helpers here, Mr. Bruder and Mr. Garcia, who will be moderating your comments and taking questions in our chat. So be sure to use that to your advantage today. And of course, as you know, if you've been watching us all year, we'll have a Kahoot game at the very end. So stay tuned for that. All right, let's get started. All right, it is about cars, isn't it? So think of a famous movie car. I have a couple examples there on the screen. For example, Batman's tumbler, right? Indestructible armor. Or Bumblebee, we know he can change and transform, of course. And my favorite, my personal favorite, is the DeLorean, because who doesn't want to time travel, right? But while all these sci-fi cars really don't exist, they all had a purpose in mind and had some reason for being around. Let's get back to reality though. Scientists and innovators right now are trying to come up with ways to look at the future of cars, how to make it more sustainable and fuel efficient. Well, what do I mean by that? It means how can we use less energy? And as you can see here, right now there's two types of cars we typically have on the road, gas cars versus electric cars. Here are some of the differences. As you might already know, gas-powered cars are using gasoline fuel, which is a fossil fuel. And we know this creates pollution. You might not see it right away when a car is running, but over time, all that pollution, the emissions from that car go up into our air and eventually pollute our air that we breathe. Versus alternative energy cars. These are going to be cars that we are seeing a lot more on the road now. They're either going to be electric cars or hybrid cars. If they're all electric cars, they're using rechargeable batteries. If they're hybrid cars, they use little or no gas, or actually little gas, because a hybrid is a combination of gas and the electric battery. So it's a lot better choice than just having a gas-powered car, of course. Here's some interesting statistics. In 2018, just in California, we had 32 million cars on our road. That's amazing. But here's another interesting kind of sad statistic. If you were to say have 20 kids in your class, out of those 20 people, and they all had their own cars, right? Imagine you get a free car. Only 1 out of 20 of them would have a car that was a hybrid or an electric car. So out of 32 million cars, only have 1 out of 20 only have hybrid or electric cars. That's not too encouraging. So we have to think, what are some ways we can maybe reduce our gasoline, reduce the things that we're using as far as gas-powered cars? So that's our first chat question for you guys to get us started. I want you in the chat to think and jot some of your ideas down. What are some ways that you and your family might reduce using gasoline? I'll say that again. What are some ways that you and your family might reduce on using gasoline? So for me, example, I know I have some stores really close to my home. Instead of driving to get groceries, I might take a walk there or ride my bike. Okay, so go ahead and jot some of those ideas in the chat, and we will come back to them soon. So there is a demand for people to come up with some practical solutions to this problem. One of those problem solvers in engineering is called a mechanical engineer. So did you know you could be a mechanical engineer? Anyone can, really. It just depends on your interests. So in a moment here, we're going to watch this video. And what I'd like you to take a look at the video. There's 3 kids, and they all have different interests, different strengths. And what I want you to do is when you're watching that, think about who do you mostly identify with? Could you be one of these students? Okay, so let's take a look at mechanical engineering.
Meet Peter, Sarah, and Mo. They each have very different interests, skills, and passions. They've all started thinking about what job they'd like to do in the future. They've all heard of engineers, but aren't 100% sure about what they do. Peter loves working out how things work, from washing machines to radios. However, he's not sure what that has to do with being an engineer. Peter, it's not just washing machines and radios that need fixing, it's also cars. And perhaps instead of fixing cars, you are designing them. Or testing them, making them smoother, safer, or greener. Or rather than cars, how about aeroplanes, trains, boats, or tanks? Sarah loves sport, all sport, but she's struggling to see what that's got to do with engineering. Sarah, did you know that the incredible feats we saw in the Olympics were only possible due to the collaborative work between athletes and engineers? But it's not only in the velodrome. Engineers can tell us when a goal is scored or a wicket falls. They've enabled ski jumpers to fly further, keeping hang gliders in the air and racing yachts on the water. With a career in engineering, Sarah could be helping to win future gold medals. Mo is passionate about global ecology and realises that engineering is helping to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. With the right qualifications, Mo could be part of a team that installs wind farms. He could be analysing wind speed and direction data to determine the best location for a wind farm, or analysing and testing the blade designs that harvests the wind energy. For Peter, Sarah and Mo, engineering represents the start line, the start to a career problem solving, designing, travelling, creating and team building. Where will your path lead?
Okay, and that is the question. Where will your path lead based on your interests and strengths and values? So as you saw in the video, mechanical engineers don't just work on cars, right? They can be in any aspect. So they fit into all sorts of parts of our daily life, from, say, a seatbelt design to the conveyor belt you might see at the grocery store, or even that mechanical pencil you're probably using right now. So mechanical engineers are basically designing devices, solving problems, but in particular, they're using a lot of their work with machines, forces, and motion. And that's why they're so integral with cars. So this is a good time, Mr. Bruder, to check in on some of our responses to our earlier question, which was, what are some ways you or your family could help reduce on using gasoline? What are some things we might have heard, Mr. Bruder?
Hey, Mrs. Hughes, we have some great ideas from our viewers. We had Sean, who shared with us, like you said, walking to things that are nearby. Also riding bikes. Sean and Gael shared that. We also had a few people share about riding scooters, maybe skateboards. Another person, Roxanne, shared that when it's safe to do again, we could carpool.
Yes.
Even using delivery services as well.
That's true. I like that. And I think, boys and girls, all of those fantastic ideas and answers will all contribute to reducing on our gas pollution, or the air pollution that we're caused from gasoline. So great job, and hopefully you can convince your parents of the same. So that is going to lead us to our next question about cars. And so think about this for the chat. This is all about cars, right? Particularly we're doing a WindPowered car. But if you could design a car, any type of car, but it had to be more environmentally friendly, how would you do it? Okay, if you could design a car to be more environmentally friendly, how would you do it? Maybe is it going to use a different type of fuel? So maybe think of what some things you already know. We mentioned some in the beginning, but it could be something totally out there that hasn't even been invented yet. So use your imagination, jot those in the chat, and we're going to come back to those as well a little bit later. So talking about inventing and creating things, I want to share a really inspiring video about a teen girl, and her determination problem solving was really evident here because she wanted a car and she didn't just go out and buy one, she actually made one from scratch. So let's take a look at hers.
My name is Kathleen Demara, and I'm 14 years old, and I'm rebuilding a Pontiac Fiero.
All right, what are you working on today?
We're going to do welding first.
Welding first. Okay.
My car that I'm building is a Fiero 86 GT. It's going to be all black and yellow interior, and then the body is going to be gloss black with yellow racing stripes. My car is going to be fast and sporty and just cool. I got the idea to build my car the summer before I turned 12. I've been to 1 or 2 car shows with my dad before, and so that's where the idea sparked, hey, maybe I could rebuild a car.
She's like, I'm going to pay for it myself. It'll be a car that only has 2 seats, so I won't have a lot of friends to get in trouble with. So we decided, okay, we'll let her try it.
I think people have been so enthusiastic because it's not necessarily something you see every day, because my age sets me apart from most people who work on them, and also the fact that I'm a girl working in what would be considered guys' fields. As much as that kind of annoys me, really, it's just annoying that people always ask me, so what's it like to be a girl doing this? It doesn't really matter that I'm a girl doing this. I mean, I'm able to do it just as well as any other person.
Got it? Oh, yeah.
I don't think that there are enough women working in the engineering field because they think, oh, it's guys' world. But I hear these stories about women who are in it and they brought so much to it.
Hi, Catherine. Michelle Pickering. It's great to meet you.
You too.
What do you want to see at the auto show, Catherine? You can see the rest of Chevrolet. You can see the Camaro.
Let's do the Camaro.
Okay.
I want to talk with them about their role mostly. I want to see how much women can actually bring to the automotive world.
See that neat stuff feature that we put into the bumper?
Cool.
Did you put that in?
We put that in that
You guys
bumper.
need to go over there and then we'll get a picture of the two of you by the bumper.
Oh, there's a handle. Look at this. There's a handle.
At 14, I never would have accomplished half as much.
How old are you?
14.
Wow.
Catherine just is so impressive in terms of her knowledge and her way she handles herself.
Her mind just works like an engineer. She wants to know why.
I'm just trying to figure out this timing chain thing. What's going on here? I want to see how challenging it is or how different it is for women.
When I first came in, many times I was viewed as being a secretary. Today, that's different. There are many opportunities for women, although we still don't have an equal number of women in the engineering fields as we do males.
My concern is that as a society, we may not be encouraging women to go into science, technology, engineering, or math even. But Catherine seems to have figured it out all by herself.
This car project has definitely changed my outlook on what I want to do. I've really become interested in being a mechanical engineer. After high school, I'd really like to go to a big engineering school. There's been a few places who have contacted me, and it's been kind of cool to see them reaching out already. It's important to me to be a role model in this project because I want to be there to say, hey, look, girls really can do this. You shouldn't put them down if they want to try. Just give them the chance. I think that people should have the chance to chase after their dreams and help them come true.
Well, how cool is that? It's so inspiring. I think for any young lady out there, don't think about you can't do some of the same things that, again, quote unquote, men might be doing or boys might be doing. She obviously had an interest and she went for it. So that's great. Well, there are so many other aspects that are connected to going into cars. So I've listed a couple here for you to kind of think about. One of them is automotive engineer. That's kind of the main engineer that's going to design and create the car. So again, what's it going to run on? What's the frame going to look like? All the different parts of how this car actually is going to work. An electrical engineer. If you'd like to be an electrical engineer, that person deals with all the electronics, of course. So not just the lights, but just how the wiring works inside the car itself. A commercial and industrial designer. I like this one. This is a fun one. These type of engineers and designers are creating all the gadgets, all the tools that go inside the car to make it a little more interesting. So that GPS system that maybe your car has, your family has in your car, or heated seats, or the airbags. All cars have to have airbags. Those are done by commercial and industrial designers. And then the wind engineer. a wind engineer is going to test and kind of analyze how aerodynamic the car is going to be. So if you see that picture there, there's actually wind going over the car, because if you want it, if it's aerodynamic, it's going to be more efficient and it can go further with less gasoline or less fuel, hydro fuel or electrical fuel. So to make it aerodynamic, that's really important to have fuel efficiency as well. And the great thing about wind engineering is it can be applied to other environmental jobs. So, before we build, Mr. Bruder, we want to revisit the question. Do we have any suggestions from our audience about if they could design a car to be more environmentally friendly, how would you do it?
Yes, we have some great ones. And you know what, Mrs. Hughes, a lot of the ideas coming from our viewers are things you teach about there at the energy station.
That's awesome. So I'm assuming I'm hearing, or we're seeing maybe some comments about how to make electric cars last longer, maybe the battery life, or maybe hydrogen cars, which we don't see too many of, but that's also using a natural element of our earth that's renewable. That's fantastic. And I'm glad to hear that our students are kind of paying attention to what's on the road.
Yeah, there's some really innovative ideas here, such as a wind-powered car, which I think you'll be getting into. Daniel shared that. Even some futuristic, maybe not so distant future, flying cars with wheels that could transform into hover wheels and have like a smart driver. Something else I know you teach about there at the energy station, a geothermal powered car.
That sounds really cool. And you know, I think it's fun, boys and girls, when we can get inspired just by even some imaginary things in the movies, like we talked about the movie cars in the beginning. I would love to see flying cars in the future. I think that would be so cool. Okay, so boys and girls, we are going to start by using our engineering design process to go step by step to solve our problem today. So as we talked about in the beginning, we know the problem right now is that there's just way too many cars out there that are gas powered. Again, 32 million vehicles, only 1 in every 20 were eco-friendly. Again, it's like one person out of your classroom. So our solution, our goal here is to design and build a car that uses a renewable energy, eliminating that need for the gasoline. That's going to be our goal. So once I have my problem and my solution mapped out there, I'm going to go ahead and start imagining. Now, I love how some people already said wind power cars. Well, here's where I got some inspiration too. Actually, before we get to imagine, we're going to ask some more questions. So some questions I might have would be, well, how much energy does it actually take to power a car? What can I learn from the existing EV? EV stands for electric vehicle, or hybrid cars. What are the type of materials I'm going to be using, or just in general, how much time would it take maybe to make this prototype or in real life? But as I was jumping ahead there, I was saying I got my inspiration because a while back, you can see here, I was at the beach. Obviously not now, it's too cold, but I saw these really crazy like go-kart machines, and I found out they're called land sailors. Okay, there's some other names for them too, but essentially it was like a go-kart with a sail. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So when you imagine, boys and girls, your next step might be, what do you already see for inspiration, as some of you already noted in the comments, and maybe that could be the starting point for your prototype. My next step is going to be, well, building up my materials, collecting those. So this is a good point, boys and girls, that if you don't have everything right now at this moment, you can pause this video and get what you need to get and then come back to it. Okay, you won't miss anything. So here is our must-have and our may-have list. So let me review these materials for us. First of all, we are going to need some cardboard. Any size is fine, probably about the size of a piece of paper. Then you just need regular paper, copy paper is fine. 3 wooden skewers or thin sticks. I would prefer the wooden skewers because they're straight. If you just grab some thin sticks, they have to be thin enough that they're actually going to fit into our next item, the straws. Okay, so they have to be fairly skinny. 2 straws, 4 hopefully recycled bottle caps. Now, if you don't have bottle caps, I'm going to tell you what you can use in the may have section that might be a good alternative. Tape, any sort of tape is fine, and of course scissors. Okay. Now on the may have section, if you don't have those bottle caps, you can actually get away and make this using Lifesaver candies. Okay. Now don't go telling your parents right now, rush on, get me a bunch of candy. But those would be helpful, or like the mints that have the holes in them, because essentially we're going to use the caps or the Lifesavers as the wheels for our car. Okay. And if you don't have either one of those, use your imagination. Okay. Maybe it can be something like just more cardboard to make the circles, or lids to like some old containers, but we do want them to have the same size and shape. Later on, we do want to test these. So I put the may-haves using a fan or a blow dryer, just because just going outside in the wind probably is not going to be the best way to test. We want something where it's directing the wind to see if it actually moves your car. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my dock cam to kind of show off my work. So give me a second there. And I have my materials all ready to go. Okay, so again, if you need to pause and come back to it, you can. We're going to go ahead and create this. So I have some of my materials, and I'm actually going to put some of this aside for the moment and just go step by step. Okay. On the left side, you see on my screen, I have some vocabulary I'm going to be referring to when we're talking about creating a car. And you don't have to know all of these, but they're kind of helpful because it's the main components of a car. The first part, the cardboard, is going to stand for actually our second word that's on the list, CHASSIS. It might look like it says chassis, but it's pronounced chassis. Okay, this is called the chassis. The chassis is going to be basically the floorboard or the base of the car itself. Okay, and then I'm going to take my straws, my 2 straws, and I'm going to tape them down. These are going to be part of actually our first word. I'm using my painter's tape here. Our first word on the list there is called a wheel and axle. So let me just go ahead and so you can see that a little better. Okay, the wheel and axle is a simple machine. If those of you are maybe in 5th grade or maybe you're studying or will be studying about simple machines, a wheel and axle is basically, this is the axle part, and then the wheel is going to be our bottle cap. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and tape the axle part down to my chassis. And again, you see my chassis itself is only about the size of my hand. So if you make your cardboard or pick out cardboard that's any bigger than that, unless you have a really long straw, you're going to have to trim it down. So keep the cardboard simple, not really, super huge. I'm going to grab some more tape here. I'm going to keep this part of my axle straight, obviously, because we don't see cars like that. That would be kind of weird. Okay, and I'm just using blue tape so you guys can see it better. I was a little concerned with the Scotch tape you wouldn't be able to see it. Okay, so I have my axle attached to the chassis, and then I'm just going to trim off a little bit of excess here. So I'm going to cut some of this off. I don't want it flying around my room. There we go. And my straws, again, I have plastic straws. I really want to have plastic straws, but at least I'm using these all up. They're kind of bendy, so I maybe just cut off the bendy part. You want to keep these straight. Okay. And you know what? I'm actually going to readjust this because I think this side now is a little too short. All right, that seems about even. Again, the great thing about tape is you can kind of adjust as much as you might need to for your car. Okay, let me see if I can refocus that for us. Give me a second here. So I'm going to focus that. Okay, cool. All right, so part of my axle, I don't have the wheels on yet. So I'm going to put this aside and get my skewers out. Okay, 2 of them. Now again, if you don't have skewers, I'm going to show you the shortcut you can do with the lightsabers for this. Okay, for here, I'm going to take a bottle cap, water bottle cap. Okay, and this is where you need to be really careful, boys and girls, because plastic is, let me zoom in a little more here. Plastic is pretty hard, right? So to use scissors on these, I mean, if you're going to poke a hole, just be careful not poking your finger. Personally, since I'm an adult, I'm going to actually use a box cutter knife. So please don't go and use these unless you have adult supervision. But I'm going to use this just because it'll make my hole in the cap easier to puncture. So I'm going to take my box cutter knife and I'm just going to make a hole by making a little cut here, like an X. Okay, so there's my little cut. And I'm going to feed the skewer through. Okay. So I can already see that I might need to do some adjusting because it looks like some of the tabs, little flaps here are maybe making a little bit crooked, but essentially that's going to be my first wheel. My next step is I'm going to actually take the skewer and feed it through the straw. Okay, here we go. Because if I just attach this to here, it's not going to spin, but now this stick is free to move around inside the straw. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the same to the other side. I actually have some already punctured, so I'm going to put these on like that. Okay. And if I zoom out here, you can see the rest of it. So let's see. Okay, so I have my other axle that I made earlier. I'm going to feed that through the straw. And I'm going to do one more here really carefully. Another funny thing you could do, which I was thinking about, like, oh, what are some different materials we could use? You know, bottle caps, lifesavers. And I started thinking, gosh, you know, if you go and eat out, and sometimes, you know, we have our plastic cups, like for, you know, the lids to plastic cups that fit the straw in it, those already have holes in them. Okay, so here we go. Now, all I want to do is maybe trim off the edges of these a little bit. This one's already trimmed, so I'm going to trim this side. And again, just be careful with your scissors. I'm just actually kind of just bending this a bit so it doesn't fly all over the room. And that will just kind of, you know, bring off take some of the weight off. Now that actually brings us to the third word that's on our list. We covered what the word wheel and axle are and what a chassis is. Those are two big parts of the car. But the third word, mass, has to do with how much stuff is on the car. Okay, so if I have a lot of mass of this car, it's going to be hard to move. I want to keep it lightweight. And that's what a lot of car engineers were trying to do. Okay, force obviously is the wind that we're going to be using for this. So obviously the more mass, it's going to be related to the more force we're going to need to push it. Okay, so our whole goal is to keep the mass, the amount of mass of this car down. Okay, so I'm halfway done. My third step, yeah, more or less my third step, is going to be to take the last skewer and I'm going to make a sail out of this. Actually, I'm going to make the mast. So if you know anything about boats, the sail is going to be what we're using the paper for. This is the stick that's going to hold that sail up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and puncture a hole into my car chassis really carefully. I'm just going to wiggle that in there. I don't want to make it too big. I think this mast is a little long, so I'm going to want to trim this down, maybe about that much. Okay, I guess it just depends on how big you want your sail. You could probably have a really long mast if you wanted to. Okay, and then I'm going to now tape this down into the hole. I don't want it touching the bottom because you don't want the stick. You don't want the stick to like poke all the way through and it's, you know, rubbing against the ground. So just kind of keep it like that. All right, and you might have to do some modifications. That's the great thing when we get to our next step after we're creating is we have to test it. And that's when you can kind of troubleshoot, just like a car engineer will do. What's going on? Why isn't this not working? What part do I need to adjust? All right, so there's the mast. And now I'm going to make the sail. Now, again, use your imagination. Maybe you want to design a triangle sail or make it curvy. I'm just going to keep mine simple for now, and I'm going to make a couple slits to affix this to the mast. So I'm going to just gently bend this and trim a couple slits. this paper. Okay. And I'm going to feed this through my mast, like that. Okay. There we go. Okay. I think just for extra security, I might put a little bit more tape on here just to keep this from rotating around. Right? And there we go. We got a wind-powered car. Pretty simple, right? Now I mentioned about the Lifesaver one. So I made one earlier. I can show you here. And with what do you notice that's different? This one with the Lifesavers, it doesn't have the straws. I didn't need the straws. So I just needed to put the Lifesaver on the straw tip itself. And then I wrapped a little bit of tape to keep it from falling out. Okay, and this actually moves fairly well too. So if you don't have any wooden skewers, just the straws and the Lifesaver candies are all you need to make a wheel and axle. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and share a little bit more about what we're doing here. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. And if you see here, I did some testing. Now, in that first one, you noticed I had wheels that were a little bit larger. Those actually came from some sports drink bottles, so the wheels were bigger. There's my Lifesaver car. And if you notice the difference, that's just from my first test. I already see some things I might want to adjust if I were to use the sports bottle car with the orange wheels. They weren't really going as straight. My Lifesaver car, though, that looked pretty straight. So I can already see some things I'm going to adjust and improve upon. Which actually leads to our last stage of our EDP process is what would you do to improve your design? What would you do to improve your design? Okay, so go ahead and take a moment to think about. You saw some of my examples. What are some things that if you were to improve, what might you do to your design itself? And if it's a whole class watching, maybe you guys can come up with one idea you want to share, how you guys would improve your cars. If you're individually, wherever you're at, watching all over the place in the country, not just Chula Vista, tell us what you would do to improve your design, and we might be able to read your comment here a little bit later. So as we wrap up our EDP process, we've done all 5 steps. We asked our questions, we got some ideas, some inspiration, and imagined what that car might look like. We planned ahead with different materials, and we created a prototype. And then once we test it, we might want to improve on that prototype based on the things that we're seeing. All right, so before we start here, again, you can type in some of those ideas of how you improve, but we are going to move into our Kahoot game. So I know you guys are excited for that. So as we've talked about in the past, you're going to want to have a separate window, not a separate tab, a separate window, so you can see both my screen and then your Kahoot answer screen. And you can follow along with the website there, kahoot.it, or using the app. There's our game pin, and our moderators are going to put the links in the chat as well. 176-1057. Okay. And this is a good opportunity, Mr. Bruder, if we have any other questions or comments or suggestions about how to make just the most interesting, most efficient car out there.
Hey, Mrs. Hughes. Yeah, we still have a lot of them coming in. We have one from Eric who said to improve, he might add a 3rd axle to make the car drive straighter.
Oh, that's a good idea.
We also, and like I said, we have more and more coming in as we're speaking. There was one from Fernanda that said noticed that the Lifesaver car rolls faster and straighter, where the ones with the orange wheels, I think you mentioned they were from a sports drink, the caps were a little more crooked and stopped. So for her design, she would change it to the Lifesavers instead of the bottle caps.
I have a feeling that's probably what a lot of students are going to be doing. And I think it's interesting. There's a word we didn't talk about, which I want to see if you guys can take a guess. we've used this word a lot in physics, but it's when two things are rubbing up against each other that actually might slow it down. I may have used it in another live event before, but if anyone can think of it, it starts with an F. It basically means you're slowing something down. Okay, so I'll give you a moment to think. If you're thinking of the word friction, that's why I think those Lifesaver candies work so much better. They're uniform, meaning they're all the same shape. They don't really have any rough edges around them. Versus my sports bottle drink caps, yes, they were kind of crooked. Maybe I didn't make the hole centered enough. So those are all really important things to consider, boys and girls, when you're engineering things. Is how is the math going to fit into this? How is the science of like friction going to fit into this? But I agree. I like how you guys observed that the Lifesaver one was definitely smoother. I think it'd be a little bit different if you started to eat the candy though.
Well, it makes for a tastier car as well.
I think so. Well, I'm seeing tons and tons of students joining, some incredible names that are popping up. I think it's so fun every week. We have some new names. Legend Iguana and Super Snail. That reminds me of that movie about the snail that went fast. I can't remember what the name of that movie was. Cute Jack.
Mrs. Hughes, while we have some of our friends logging in, could I share with you some more ideas for cars that people shared earlier?
Absolutely.
All right, great. We have one from Zach where he mentioned that he would give the car, have it run through air or oxygen powered engine, so that it runs on something that's more eco-safe and would make like the outer hull thicker for car crashes, and make the outside cooler looking too.
Yeah.
And the inside could be, more cushioned for the driver.
I see. Yeah, and it's really interesting. Another engineer we didn't really talk about, but chemical engineers might be really important in designing that too. As you know, I mean, certain chemicals are going to work much more efficiently than others. I mentioned something like a hydrogen car, which is out there. And the interesting about hydrogen cars is that if someone were to have a hydrogen car, not only they're pumping this chemical in called hydrogen, which is a natural occurring chemical, but what comes out of it instead of dirty, emissions is actually water. So it's a really interesting process that they're not giving out anything that's going to be negative to our environment. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. I believe you said it was Zach, coming up with maybe looking at different chemicals that can kind of help out. Okay. I know that there's a certain movie that Mr. Bruder you're fond of that maybe they might use nitrous and some other type of chemicals to go fast.
I think I know which one you're talking about. Speaking of cars, and clean energy, we had another student share that they would do a solar powered car so that they could use the sunlight to power their car.
That's fantastic. That makes so much sense. We've talked about it here tons of times, boys and girls, that being renewable means that you just find resources that are not going to waste, create more waste in our environment. And solar panels are definitely one of them. I've seen some pictures before, some prototypes, and it's really interesting that the prototypes I've seen, the solar panels completely cover the roof of the car. So they're not these straight clunky things you might see on a roof. They're curved, they fit right on the car. And so when you're driving, yeah, you're getting sunlight all the time to keep your car going.
And if I could share one more with you, we had one from Isabella that kind of takes it to the next level. Not only will it use one form of clean energy, it will use two. So this one would adapt to the weather. So if it's raining, it would be water powered or hydroelectric possibly. And then if it's sunny, it would use solar power.
Wow, Isabella, you are thinking really efficiently there. I love it. So yeah, say if you decide to move and you don't have all this wonderful sun and the place you go to has lots of rain, you're still driving your car with rain power as well as sun power. Love it. These are some really innovative ideas. And I really do hope, boys and girls, that you guys think like that outside the box. Those are the ideas that in our future, we need some new engineers to think productively, think really innovatively, outside of what we're kind of used to. So that's fantastic. Wow, we're already up to 141 players. My goodness. I think we have some people who are ready to get started. So are we ready to go, Mr. Bruder?
I think so.
Okay. All right, get ready, boys and girls. Up 142, they got in there. Here we go, building a wind-powered car. Our first question is, which vehicles create the least amount of pollution? Which vehicles create the least amount of pollution? Would it be gas-powered cars, red triangle? Would it be hybrid cars, blue diamond? All electric cars, yellow circle, or bicycles, green square? Again, our question is, which one creates the least amount of pollution? So think about what we learned in the beginning. Gas-powered cars, what are they using for their fuel? Hybrid cars, how are they using their fuel? What's an electric car using? Okay, we have some answers flooding in really fast. This one I think is one of those questions you just have to be quick on your fingers. Which vehicles create the least amount of pollution? So not that much of pollution. All right, and we're going to find out our answer. Absolutely good, bicycles. Yes, a bicycle is a vehicle. Okay, and not the electric scooter ones. Okay, a bicycle with just your people power. Least amount of pollution because you don't pollute the air. Okay, let's see who's in the lead for our first question. Royal Alpaca. Okay. Question number 2. In California, about how many people have an eco-friendly car? About how many people have an eco-friendly car or environmentally friendly car? Is it about one person in every city in California? One person in every school? One person in every classroom? Or one person in every family? So remember in the beginning, I gave some statistics, 32 million vehicles on our road in California, but not too many right now are registered as environmentally friendly ones. So I made a comparison. If you remember that comparison to give you some perspective, was it about one person in every city in our state? One person in every school in our state? One person in every classroom? Or one person in every family? And we're going to find out who remembers that statistic. Okay, some good listeners, you're right. About 1 in 20, or one person for every classroom. Assume your class has at least 20 kids in it, maybe more. And you guys, most of you got that one right. So, who's in the lead now? Noble Crane. Okay, again, I think this quiz today is about being fast on your fingers. Okay, number 3. A mechanical engineer mostly does what? Is it they work with machines and devices that move? Do they mostly design and test things with electricity? Does a mechanical engineer mostly create gadgets and tools? Or does a mechanical engineer analyze how the wind works? Okay, and so we gave some different examples of types of engineers. If you remember, what does a mechanical engineer mostly address? Do they work with machines and devices that move? Red triangle. Do these engineers design and test things with electricity? Blue diamond. Do they create gadgets and tools? Yellow circle. Or do they analyze how the wind works? Green square. Okay, and we see who remembers this type of engineer. All right, good job. This was all about motion today, right? So they work with machines and devices. If you remember, the other ones were electrical engineer or commercial industrial designer or wind engineer. And now Gentlebee is in the lead. Wow, the names are all over the place today, Mr. Gruder. It'll be very interesting to see who's on top. Okay, number 4. What makes it more difficult for a car to move? Makes it more difficult for a car to move. Would it be the parts called the wheel and axle? Red triangle. Would it be the part called the chassis? Blue diamond. Would it be the word mass? Yellow circle. Or is it the concept of force? Green square. What's going to make it more difficult for a car to move? Okay, so remember, think about things that are helping the car versus like if I have too much stuff on the car, that was kind of the clue. That might make it harder for that car to move in the first place because it's getting heavier. So which word describes that it's going to be difficult for it to move? All right, let's see who has an answer for this one. Fast fingers. Nice. All right, you guys are awesome. Good listening. So mass is definitely going to add to the difficulty of making that car move. Good job. Wow, Gentlebee really is on it. That's the first time we've had 2 in a row. So let's see. And 9 players with an answer streak. Okay, last question for the day, boys and girls. It's an improved question. To improve the design of a car, you might look at other car designs, try out other materials, talk to car experts, or all of the above. If you want to improve the design of your car, would you look to other car designs? Red triangle. Would you try out some other materials? Blue diamond. Would you talk to some car experts, people who know what they're doing? Yellow circle. Or just all of these ideas. Green square. What would you do to improve the design of your car? All right, last couple answers are chiming in. Absolutely. You guys are so on it. And that's the great thing about being an engineer is that you got to look to people who know their stuff so you can kind of get more ideas. So let's see, we have Stellar Lobster came in 3rd. Honest Duck, number 2, and on top 5 out of 5 would be Gentlebee. Okay, Gentlebee, good job. And congratulations to our runners up, Flying Bee and Silly Crane. Nice effort, boys and girls. All right, so boys and girls, we are going to wrap up our presentation today. And I want to go ahead and share with you some really cool news. As Mr. Garcia, who presented last week, was saying, was encouraging you guys to go ahead and subscribe, and our subscribers are up. So if you haven't actually subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do, or at least ask your families if you can, and get our growing followers online there. You can go ahead and take a look at any of the activities and any of the sessions we've done this past year. They're really starting to grow, and so ask your families about that, as well as look at some past ones from the year that you might be interested in. Okay, our moderators are going to put that link in the chat as well, so you know exactly where to go to, which leads us to our presentation for next week with the wonderful Miss Christy Bystruck from the Hydro Station. She's going to do her presentation on protecting our watersheds. That's next Friday, January 29th at 1 p.m. on Teams. Be sure, boys and girls, to check with your teachers. Look out for those flyers and social media families if you want to join us on Twitter and kind of follow our goings on with our Innovation Station teams. All right, boys and girls, I look forward to seeing you another time. Be safe out there, work on your cars, and we'll see you next time. Bye.